Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Cathy Holloway. I'm a professor here at UCL in Interaction Design and Innovation, and also the Academic Director of the Global Disability Innovation Hub. I want to take you back to 1826, when UCL became the first secular university in England. It was the first university to open its doors to people of any race, of any creed, of any religion. Fast forward a little bit to 1878, and it was enlightened enough to let women in. So men and women could come to UCL, and we could create knowledge together. We learnt and we created knowledge. Now back then, we were created in the Bloomsbury campus. Bloomsbury, for those of you that are new to London, is in central London. It's a Zone 1 tube ticket. Back then, it was not in central London. It was on the outskirts of London. That area was yet to realise its full potential. And yet UCL, as the first university in London, I like to think helped to spark what became an intellectual powerhouse called the Bloomsbury set. Now those edges of cities, we've all been in edges of cities. It's where some people have just lived all of their lives, and other people are moving towards the city. They want to get into this city. Other people might be trying to get out and move somewhere else. But some people in a city are part of the power structures of that city. They're part of the fabric that keeps things running, and some people are not. Now, education, I believe, is something that helps to spark our ingenuity, but it also helps us to create societies which are able to work together towards great things. But it's those edges that are the most creative. And that's where UCL started its disruptive thinking. Now let's fast forward to 2012. London hosted the first Paralympic and Olympic Games that was fully accessible. It was the first time the Paralympics was sold out. It was the first time that regardless of who you were, you could come and watch the Olympics or the Paralympic Games. It was a wonderfully proud moment to be in London, and I personally was delighted to be in London. I also had absolutely nothing to do with putting on the Olympic or the Paralympic Games. I simply came and enjoyed them. I enjoyed running around this park from stadium to stadium. I enjoyed bumping into people of all types of nationalities, speaking random languages, learning to speak random words. I enjoyed taking the tube, because it was the only time in my history of living in London that people spoke to one another on the tube. You got on the tube and everybody wanted to know, had you been to the games? Where were you going? Who did you see? Which medals? Who won? Where were you from? It was wonderful. It was the edges all colliding. It was the creativity sparking left, right, and centre. And we, UCL, are lucky enough to have a campus on the very same place, in the very same park. And I'm going to take you back to 2014. In 2014, a wonderful woman called Paola Lettieri was appointed within engineering faculty. She was a professor of chemical engineering, and she was asked, it seems like UCL are going to build a campus on the East. And the dean, then Anthony Finkelstein, said to her, can you ask Pete, can you try and figure out what we should do? Like, what should be in this new campus? Other people have built campuses. They've built satellite campuses, other universities. And normally, in those satellite campuses, you take a bit of the university and you move it, or you expand it. Oh, mechanical engineering gets bigger labs. Or, oh, it might be more interesting to study this particular topic, so we'll grow it. But not us, not UCL. What we wanted to do was create multidisciplinarity that solved real-world problems. So anybody at UCL, it wasn't the top professors. I was a lecturer, a lowly lecturer. I had just become an academic. I had just been allowed into that power circle, if you like. I just got my ticket that I could stay at UCL for as long as I wanted. And I said, ooh, it would be nice if we had a space that we could co-create assistive technologies together with people. Now, I had worked at interfaces. I had worked in designing tube trains. I'd worked in hospitals. I'd worked as care assistant. Sometimes I was designing a technology. Other times I was testing a technology. Other times cities were asking me to help them make their spaces inclusive. And each time I had one of these conversations, it was in isolation of all the other parties that made up the complex problem that is disability inclusion. So yes, the tube might get more accessible, and yes, the city might become more accessible, or yes, we might create a better wheelchair, or we might create a better way of procuring a wheelchair. But all of those things have to happen, and we have to overcome stigma. So, stigma. In 2015, I was sitting in a lab in North London. I've had these ideas. I kept saying, let's build assistive technology centre, let's try and do that. And UCL, Paola Lettieri and team had said, OK, Kath, build a business case, do that. But in true UCL fashion, they also said, you should talk to other people. And they introduced me to Vicky Austin and Ian McKinnon. And when I say they introduced me, they told me I should probably meet with them. And I asked Julia Barbareschi, my first ever PhD student, please email these people. I don't know who they are. But can you see if they want to attend our next Accessibility Research Group meeting? And so they did. They travelled from here. They took a train to King's Cross, to the Bloomsbury campus. They then went north on the northern line, and they arrived at Tufnell Park. And they had to travel about a 5-minute walk into an industrial estate, go through a massive iron barrier, get through that, and in front of them was a laboratory. And when you walked through that laboratory, what they weren't expecting was there was a tube train. We were at the time designing the next tube train for Transport for London to try and make it more accessible to people. My team was sitting on this train, and we had a small screen, just like this one, and we were talking about the research we were doing. And Ian and Vicky presented their vision of a Paralympic legacy, which Ian at the time had called Paralympicpolis. And he had this word, Paralympicpolis. You can meet Ian and you can ask him what that means. And he had all these branches of Paralympicpolis, all the different bits that he thought could map. And if we all came together, we could do something different around disability. Now, I have absolutely no idea what I was meant to do immediately after that meeting. I do know that my day would have been jammed, and I was meant to do something else. But what I did was I got back on a bus with Ian and Vicky, back down for 35 minutes to King's Cross, because I didn't want the conversation to stop. I was really excited. Now, I have absolutely no idea what it was like to set up UCL in 1826. I don't know how hard it was to get planning permission to build the portico. I don't know how difficult it was to change minds and say, no, anybody should be allowed to come. It doesn't matter where they come from. I don't know how difficult it was to then say, shall we accept women to be allowed at this wonderful table? But I do think it was exciting. I reckon they had a lot of fun. And I felt a little bit of that excitement when I was at those meetings for UCL East and when I kept meeting Vicky and Ian. Now, the three of us had full-time jobs, no time, no actual budget to do anything, but we thought we could maybe spark some sort of change. And we did. We went on, I think, to grow a small but important part of the disability movement. Now, the disability movement is complex. It's rich in history. And I hope that over the next 2 days, you will hear things that get you as excited as I was that day in 2015, that you start to have conversations with people that you would never have had, that continue for decades, that you don't know where they're leading, but somehow you just trust that if you keep this conversation going, it's going to go somewhere brilliant. I also hope you hear things you completely disagree with, because that is the complex nature of disability. That is the complex nature of everybody coming together. And we have to hear each other. We have to understand each other. And then we have to work together. Now, when we set up GDI Hub in 2017, 18, we set it up as a brand about 2016, 2017. But we actually didn't incorporate any sort of official company for about a year later. And during that time, the Global Disability Summit was about to happen in London, just north of in the park here. And it was a collaboration between the government of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland and the government of Kenya. And it would convene a massive number of people onto this park so that we could begin as human beings to commit to what we were going to do to make the world more inclusive for disabled people. Now, as part of that research, we did a small study. We got did a small study. We went to Kenya, we went to Uganda. We began to understand what could work for assistive technology. And we proposed that to the UK government, that maybe this could happen. And it came from those ideas where we go around the edges. We don't only work with the people who are already doing stuff. We have to bring more people in, and then we have to try and design something different. That initial piece of research got transformed into AT 2030, which now is a massive programme. It's up to £100 million if you add all of the resources that have gone into it. And many of you in the room have co-created that with us. Many of you online. I believe there's many more of you online than there are in this room. Each of us is incredibly privileged to be a small part of that journey. I feel incredibly privileged. And when I think about privilege, I immediately think about power. And when we started AT 2030, I went to an informal settlement in Kenya. Now, there were colleagues from the UK government who funded this study, and I officially was there to set up an accelerator, a tech accelerator for assistive technology. That's what I was doing. I was finding the right partners. I was finding the right people to bring together, get the right leader, which we found in Bernard Shearer, bring these people together to transform into something that would then create assistive technologies for Kenya and for the region. Now, when we were doing that, I thought to myself, Julia was with me, we really do need to know how people are currently using technologies. And people right at the edges, like how are they getting hold of technologies? And we thought, well, what technology is available to everybody? Generally, a mobile phone. So we began to research mobile phone use in Kibera, which is an informal settlement on the outskirts of Kenya. Now, this was 2018. And there was a young man called Mohammed. Mohammed was blind. He lived in this informal settlement. And he said to me, before we started the research, he said, can I ask you a question, please? I said, sure. He said, what makes you different from everybody else? I said, what do you mean? He said, you know, you people, you come and you ask us questions and you write reports and you leave and nothing changes. And I didn't have an immediate answer for him. I made something up on the hoof, which I won't go into now. But what he meant by what makes you, what did he really mean by you? He meant probably the average white person that's flying in from the global north, asking the average young, poor black person, what can we do together? And it made me think that evening of my grandmother. Now you might think, what does a young Muslim man in Kibera have in common with my grandmother, who's an old, at the time, she's dead now, unfortunately, an old Irish Catholic woman living in the middle of Ireland? What do they possibly have in common? Well, before I came to UCL to study my PhD, I went to tell my grandmother I was leaving Galway, Ireland, and I was moving to London. And she looked me straight in the eye, and I told her I'm going to do a PhD. And she said, Jesus, Catherine, you can't go there. And I said, well, what do you mean, Nan? She said, they all think we're stupid over there. Now, by they, she meant English people. By we, she meant Irish people. She genuinely believed that each and every person in England thought that each and every person in Ireland was stupid. Now, what Mohammed and my grandmother have in common is that they know how to ask the right questions. They were both very inquisitive people. They were both people that were far outside any circles of power, but they also knew about stigma and discrimination. And when my grandmother lived in London, she worked at the Mars factory packing chocolate. UCL was up the road, but it wasn't available to her. It was. She was a woman who was educated, but she never thought in a million years that she could walk through that door. And Mohammed doesn't think he can walk through the doors of the University of Nairobi, but it's open to him. And so as we go around this journey of disability inclusion and disability innovation, I'm always struck by Mohammed's words. Nearly every time I get on a plane, I think of him. And I think, what will make us different? How will I be able to end my career and look back and think, we did something that wasn't that? And there have been things along the journey that have gone very well. And there have been things along the journey that have been really hard and didn't go so well. But I think what has kept us going and what continues to keep us going is that whilst we strive at UCL East to be inclusive, to make sure that people do feel that they can come in, then not only do we put the structures in place for that power, not only do we have laws, and not only do we have rules, and not only do we have regulations, and not only do we have processes for people to be able to access things, but we make people feel welcome. Now, it is my great honour and pleasure to welcome each and every one of you that's physically here to UCL East, to the home of the latest edge of creativity, the latest edge of disruptive thinking. It is also my great pleasure to open the Disability Innovation Summit, and to all of you that have joined online, which I'm told is hundreds, in this hybrid event, I really do thank you, and I hope that you online and here connect, have creative conversations, and as you move forward today, tomorrow, and into the next weeks, years of your life, you think about how you mainstream the disability inclusion movement. But as you do it, as you innovate in that space, as we go forward into the middle ground, we never lose sight of those edges, because those edges are going to keep us honest, they're going to keep us creative, and they're going to keep us disruptive. Thank you and welcome to UCL.